Welcome to Deep of Kindness, where real stories touch real hearts. Here you'll find emotional, motivational, and true life stories that inspire hope, compassion, and humanity. Every story reminds us that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's world. Subscribe and be part of a community that believes in love, empathy, and the power of doing good. Because kindness isn't just a word, it's a way of living. The evening sky was painted in shades of gray, heavy with rain clouds that had been threatening to burst all day. A cold wind swept across the empty highway, carrying with it the smell of wet asphalt and loneliness. Ayesha, a 27-year-old woman with a gentle heart and a determined spirit, was driving home after a long, exhausting day at work. The radio played softly, a soothing melody that barely masked the sound of raindrops tapping against the windshield. The road stretched endlessly before her, lined with flickering streetlights and the occasional flash of headlights from passing cars. Most people were in a hurry to get home, to warmth, to family, to safety. But Ayesha was never one to rush past someone in need. As she rounded a bend, something caught her attention. A dark-colored car pulled awkwardly onto the shoulder, hazard lights blinking faintly through the curtain of rain. Steam rose from under its hood. Through the misted glass, she could barely make out the shape of someone inside, their hands moving desperately over the steering wheel. Ayesha slowed down, hesitating for a moment. It was late. The road was deserted. The smart thing would have been to keep driving, but her conscience didn't let her. She sighed, pulling her small silver hatchback over a few meters ahead of the stranded vehicle. Grabbing her umbrella from the passenger seat, she stepped out into the cold drizzle. Instantly, the rain kissed her face, soaking strands of her dark hair as she walked toward the car. "Hello?" she called out, raising her voice above the hum of the rain. "Everything okay?" The car door opened and a man stepped out, his coat already drenched. He looked to be in his early 30s, tall with tired eyes that still held a spark of politeness. "My car just died," he said, rubbing the back of his neck helplessly. "Battery's dead," and he held up his phone with a sheepish grin. This decided to die with it. Ayesha couldn't help but smile. "Tough luck." "Yeah," he chuckled softly, water dripping from his hair. "Guess today wasn't meant to go smoothly." "Here," she said, handing him her phone. "You can use mine to call for help." "Really?" His eyebrows lifted slightly. "You're stopping to help a stranger in the middle of nowhere? That's rare these days." Ayesha shrugged lightly. "I'd hoped someone would do the same for me." The man nodded gratefully and dialed a number. While he spoke with the mechanic, Ayesha stood under her umbrella, glancing around the gloomy surroundings. The rain had picked up, splashing against her boots and darkening the road. The distant rumble of thunder echoed through the hills. When he ended the call, he exhaled in relief. "They'll be here in about 20 minutes." "Good," she said. "At least it's not too long." He smiled, his voice carrying warmth despite the chill. "Thank you, really. Most people would have driven past." "Maybe," Ayesha said softly. "But I guess I'm not most people." He laughed lightly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Rayan," he said, offering a hand. "Ayesha," she replied, shaking it. His palm was cold but firm, his gratitude genuine. For a few moments they stood together in the rain, two strangers brought together by chance, or perhaps fate. Rayan leaned against his car, looking almost embarrassed. "I was on my way to meet a client," he said. "Guess that's not happening anymore." "What do you do?" Ayesha asked, mostly to fill the silence. "I run a small marketing firm," he replied. "Mostly digital campaigns, brand work, the usual." Ayesha's eyes widened slightly. "Marketing? I actually studied that. I'm working at a small company downtown." "No kidding." He smiled again. "Looks like the rain's got a sense of humor." They both laughed softly, the tension between them easing as the rain drummed rhythmically around them. Minutes passed. The mechanic hadn't yet arrived. Rayan insisted she could wait in her car, but Ayesha refused. "You'll freeze out here," he said. "I'll be fine," she replied. "You're the one without a working heater." He smiled again, and something in his expression shifted. A quiet admiration, perhaps even surprise at her kindness. In a world where everyone seemed too busy, too guarded, too self-absorbed, Ayesha's simple act of compassion stood out like light cutting through the storm. The sound of an approaching engine broke their conversation. A tow truck pulled over, its headlights slicing through the rain. A tall mechanic stepped out and began examining Rayan's car. While they talked, Ayesha leaned back, watching quietly. There was something oddly peaceful about the moment. The hum of the rain, the orange glow of the streetlight, the quiet satisfaction of knowing she'd done something good. After a few minutes, Rayan turned back toward her, his voice raised slightly over the noise. "Looks like it's just the alternator. They'll tow it to the shop tonight." "That's good news," she said, smiling. He took a step closer, his expression softer now. "Ayesha, thank you. You didn't have to stop. You don't even know me." "Maybe not," she replied gently. "But sometimes helping a stranger makes the world feel a little less cold." He paused, as if memorizing her words. Then he nodded, his tone sincere. "I owe you one." Ayesha laughed lightly. "You can repay me by keeping jumper cables in your trunk next time." Deal. As the tow truck driver prepared to leave, Rayan turned once more, his coat glistening under the rain. "Hey, if you ever need a favor, or maybe some marketing advice, call me." He scribbled his number on a small notepad and handed it to her. She hesitated, then took it with a smile. "Drive safe next time." "Only if you promise to stop helping every stranger on the highway," he teased. "No promises," she said with a grin. Rayan chuckled, shaking his head as he stepped into the tow truck. "Good night, Ayesha." "Good night." As his car disappeared into the distance, Ayesha stood for a moment, the rain softening into a drizzle. The highway was empty again, the world silent except for the quiet patter of drops against the road. She climbed back into her car, turned on the heater, and watched her breath fog the glass. Something about the encounter lingered with her. The kindness exchanged between two strangers, the warmth behind his smile. She didn't know it yet, but that rainy evening wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. She started her engine, took one last look at the empty road, and drove away, her heart a little fuller, her world a little brighter. A week had passed since that rainy night on the highway. Life had returned to its usual rhythm for Ayesha, but something about that brief encounter lingered in her mind. She would catch herself thinking about the stranger with the grateful smile. Rayan, the man whose car had died under the storm. The man who had left her with nothing but a thank you and a phone number she hadn't dared to call. Still, she wasn't one to dwell on random meetings. She had bigger worries now. Today was the day, her long-awaited interview for a senior marketing position at Vertex Media, one of the city's top firms. She had dreamed of working there ever since college, admiring their creative campaigns and their reputation for innovation. It was the kind of job that could change everything, her career, her confidence, maybe even her life. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for her morning. The alarm hadn't gone off. Her bus had been delayed, then it started to rain. Again. By the time she stepped into the office building, drenched and flustered, the receptionist gave her a look that said, "You're late." "Miss Ayesha Malik?" the woman asked, glancing at her clipboard. "Yes, I'm so sorry. Traffic and the rain." "It's all right," the receptionist said kindly, though her tone was formal. "You're in luck. The panel's still in the meeting room. Second floor, last door on your right." "Thank you." Ayesha hurried to the elevator, fixing her hair in the mirrored walls, muttering pep talks under her breath. "Just breathe. You've got this." Her portfolio felt heavy in her hands, full of late nights, passion projects, and dreams she hoped someone would see value in. When the elevator doors opened, she walked down the hallway, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She took a deep breath before pushing the door open. And then, she froze. Sitting across the long glass table, flipping through a file, was Rayan. The same Rayan, the man from the roadside. For a second, her brain refused to process it. The same eyes, The same warm smile, only this time dressed sharply in a tailored suit, his presence confident and composed. He looked up, surprised, then broke into an unmistakable grin. "Well," he said, his tone amused yet kind, "looks like fate really does have a sense of humor." Ayesha blinked, speechless. You work here?" He chuckled. "I do a little more than that." He gestured toward the chair opposite him. "Please have a seat, Miss Malik." It took her a moment to find her voice. "You're the interviewer?" "Guilty," he said, smiling. "I'm the managing director here." Her heart skipped. "Managing director, of course. The man who ran a marketing firm. The one he mentioned casually while his car steamed on the highway." She had laughed about it then, not realizing she was talking to the very person who could one day decide her future. For a split second, panic surged through her. "He'll think I'm here because of that night. He'll think I'm expecting something." But then she caught his expression, warm, professional, yet filled with that same sincerity she had seen under the rain. "Don't worry," Ryan said gently, as if reading her mind. "Today, you're not the girl who stopped to help. You're a candidate, and I'm just the guy asking the tough questions." Ayesha exhaled slowly, smiling nervously. "In that case, I'll try to give the right answers." The other two panel members introduced themselves, and the interview began. Ryan didn't give her any special treatment. If anything, he was even more focused, listening intently to every word she spoke. She presented her portfolio with confidence, campaigns she had led, ideas she had executed on a budget so small it was almost laughable. She spoke about creativity, empathy, and how marketing wasn't just about selling things, but about connecting people. And the more she spoke, the more Ryan seemed intrigued. His eyes didn't hold pity or favoritism. They held respect. "Interesting perspective," he said at one point. "You believe emotion drives consumer behavior more than data?" "I believe data tells you what people do," Ayesha replied steadily, "but emotion tells you why they do it." The panelists exchanged glances, impressed. For the next 40 minutes, the interview turned into an engaging conversation about trends, ethics, storytelling, and strategy. Ayesha's nerves faded, replaced by the familiar thrill of passion, the kind that came from speaking about something she truly loved. When it ended, Ryan stood and extended his hand once again. "You did well. Miss Malik," she smiled, shaking his hand. "Thank you, sir." As she turned to leave, he added, "By the way, next time don't run through the rain before an interview. You deserve better first impressions." She laughed, glancing back. "I'll try to schedule the weather differently next time." The panel chuckled softly, and she walked out, feeling a curious mix of relief and disbelief. In the elevator, her heart pounded, not just from nerves, but from something else. What were the odds? Of all the people in the city, of all the firms she could apply to, she had ended up sitting across from the same man she had helped a week ago. As she reached the lobby, she caught her reflection in the glass doors, a woman who had taken a chance on kindness, and somehow found herself standing at the doorway of destiny. That evening, Ayesha sat by her window at home, watching the city lights flicker through the drizzle. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" "Hi," came Rayhan's voice, calm and steady. "I hope I'm not calling too late." "Not at all," she said quickly, sitting upright. "I just wanted to say thank you. Again," he said. "Not for last week, but for today. You reminded me why I love this work. Passion, integrity. Not everyone brings that into a room." Ayesha smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." There was a pause. Then his tone softened slightly. "And for what it's worth, the job's yours. The HR team will contact you in the morning. Congratulations, Ayesha." Her breath caught. "Are you serious?" "Very," he said, smiling through the phone. "Welcome to Vertex Media." For a long moment, she couldn't speak. A week ago, she had been a stranger helping a stranded driver. Now, that same stranger had just changed the course of her life. Not because of luck or sympathy, but because of who she was. "Thank you," she finally whispered. "Get some rest," Ryan said softly. "You've earned it. When the call ended, Ayesha sat there in silence, her heart full. The city outside shimmered with rain and light, a reflection of her own quiet joy. Fate had a funny way of connecting people. Sometimes it began with a broken car on a lonely road and led straight into the start of something extraordinary. The months that followed were nothing short of transformative for Ayesha. When she joined Vertex Media, she had expected to start small, maybe handle a few minor projects, quietly prove herself and work her way up. But fate has always had bigger plans. Within a few weeks, her talent was undeniable. She brought fresh perspectives to campaigns, finding human stories behind every brand, emotion behind every tagline. She wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but when she spoke, people listened. Her ideas weren't just creative, they connected. Even Rayan, the managing director who had first interviewed her, found himself drawn to her insight. He began inviting her to brainstorming sessions, late-night project reviews, and even last-minute client presentations. Every time, Ayesha exceeded expectations, calm under pressure, professional yet warm, and endlessly driven. But beyond the work, there was something else, something quieter, harder to name. It started with small gestures. Rayan would pause at her desk to ask how her day was going. Ayesha would bring him coffee before morning meetings. Their conversations slowly stretched from minutes to hours, sometimes about work, sometimes about life. They discovered shared values. Both believed in kindness, in honesty, in doing good even when no one was watching. They laughed about little things, like how the office coffee was undrinkable, or how every meeting ran 10 minutes longer than it should. Some evenings, when most employees had gone home, they'd still be there, sitting across from each other, screens glowing, the city lights reflecting off the glass walls. Sometimes they wouldn't talk at all, just exchange quiet smiles that said more than words ever could. Rayan admired her for her integrity. Ayesha admired him for his humility, the way he treated every employee with respect, no matter their position. Slowly, the lines between boss and employee blurred, replaced by mutual admiration, then friendship, and something deeper still. Yet neither of them dared to name it. Not yet. One Friday evening, after an exhausting campaign launch, the team decided to celebrate. Laughter filled the office as everyone ordered food, and music played softly in the background. When most of the staff had left, Ayesha found herself standing on the balcony, looking out at the skyline. The wind carried the faint smell of rain, again, the same kind that had brought them together months ago. "You always disappear at the end of parties." Rayan's voice came from behind her. She smiled without turning. "I like the quiet more than the noise." He stepped beside her, hands in his pockets. "You did great today. That campaign wouldn't have been half as good without you." "Thank you," she said softly. "But it's a team effort." "True," he said with a chuckle. "Still, not everyone can turn a client's dull product into something people actually care about. You make things human." Ayesha turned to him, smiling faintly. "Maybe because people matter to me more than profits." He looked at her, really looked at her, and said quietly, "That's what I like about you." For a heartbeat, silence hung between them, the kind that feels both heavy and fragile. She looked away first, pretending to watch the rain. "We should probably get going." "It's getting late," he nodded, though his gaze lingered a moment longer. "Let me drop you home." She hesitated but agreed. "All right, but only if you promise not to talk about work on the way." He grinned. "Deal." The city was quiet as they drove through the wet streets, headlights reflecting off puddles. The rhythmic sound of the wipers filled the silence. Halfway through the drive, Rayan slowed the car. A familiar stretch of road appeared, the highway where it had all begun. Ayesha's breath caught. This is where I found you." He smiled faintly, parking the car by the roadside. "Where you found me, and saved me from a long, cold night." Rain began to drizzle softly again, as if the universe itself was replaying their story. Rayan turned off the engine and faced her. Do you ever think about that night? Sometimes, she admitted, smiling gently. It was just a small act of kindness. He shook his head. It wasn't small. You stopped when no one else did. You changed how I see people. She blinked, touched but unsure what to say. Rayan. He exhaled slowly, his voice soft but steady. You once stopped to help a stranger. But that stranger found his forever because of you. Her eyes widened as he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. For a moment, the world stood still. Just the sound of rain and their hearts beating in sync. Rayan opened the box. Inside, a simple silver ring gleamed in the faint light. Elegant, understated, timeless. Ayesha, he said, his voice trembling slightly. I've met hundreds of people in my life, colleagues, clients, friends, but no one has ever made me believe in fate until you. I don't want to imagine another day where you're not part of my story. Tears welled in her eyes. Rayan. He smiled nervously. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I do know that every path worth taking started that night on this very road. So, will you walk the rest of it with me? Her hands covered her mouth as tears spilled freely. She nodded, unable to speak, then whispered, Yes. Yes, of course. Rayan's face broke into a smile of pure relief. He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling just enough to betray his own emotion. The rain fell harder now, but neither of them cared. They stepped out of the car, laughing as droplets soaked their clothes, the same way they had that first night. This feels familiar, Ayesha said, her laughter mixing with tears. It should, he replied, pulling her close. This is where our story started. And where it begins again, she whispered. As they stood there in the rain, two souls once strangers, now bound by love and fate, the world around them faded away. No city noise, no deadlines, no distance. Just the soft hum of the rain and the quiet promise of forever. That night, under the same gray sky that had once witnessed their first meeting, something new began. Not a coincidence, not luck, but destiny born from kindness. Sometimes, it takes a single act of compassion to rewrite a lifetime. And sometimes, helping a stranger on a lonely road becomes the start of the greatest love story you never saw coming.